Are you adding corals to your reef aquarium but you have no idea where to place them? You see, placing corals is one of the most important aspects when it comes to adding corals to your tank, because the placement of your coral can greatly affect the growth, the coloration, and the overall health of your coral. Now, I reached out to you, my fellow reef fanatics, on the community page, and I asked, what do you need help with in your aquarium? And 47% of you responded with coral placement. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at coral placement and what exactly is the perfect coral placement for your reef aquarium. If you're new to the hobby and you're excited to bring corals home and place them in your tank, following these simple guidelines will help set you up for success. Now, the first thing you want to do before you even buy a coral at your local fish store is you want to research the specific needs of the specific coral that you're looking at. Because before we can dive into coral placement, it's important to know that corals grow in different environments based on specific requirements. For example, some corals like higher lighting and higher water flow, while other corals like lower lighting and lower water flow. This means considering factors like lighting, water flow, and even how close corals are to other corals. All right, so we're gonna take a look at a hammer coral and what I would do if I was putting a hammer coral in the reef aquarium. So hammer corals do like medium flow, and when we talk about medium flow, we're talking about not too much flow that it's blasting the coral, but just enough flow that there's some movement with the tentacles. You can see them moving around. There's not no flow where they're just kind of sitting there. You want to add some motion through your coral. So medium flow is kind of a good place for Euphyllia. Some do really well in a lower flow too. They just don't like to be blasted with a lot of flow. So you don't want to put them directly in front of your power head or circulation pump in your tank, because that would be constant water flow just blasting the coral, and you can push too much water into the coral and make them recede or even take the tentacles right off of the skeleton. So we don't want to do flow like that. Just a nice easygoing flow through your coral, nothing too turbulent. So I just recently added a hammer coral to this aquarium. So for example, I'm using one of the printed reef sand stands to kind of hold it down in place and keep it low on the sand bed first. Now, these 3D printed products help keep your corals safe while they're sitting in the sand bed, while you're getting them acclimated and adjusted to your aquarium. It's also worth mentioning in the beginning that you don't necessarily need to glue your coral frags down and put them in a permanent home right away. Now, it's a good idea to introduce any new corals at the bottom of your aquarium, put them on the sand bed. You don't necessarily need to start them high up on the rockwork or in the middle of the rockwork, because you want to slowly adjust them over time. So when you put them in your tank, you can let them sit a few days to a week, monitor how they're doing, how they're adapting and getting adjusted to your tank, and then you can move them up from there. So things like Acropora usually like it high up in the rockwork, and they like higher lighting. Acropora is SPS coral, and that stands for small polyp stony coral. Now, hammer corals are LPS corals, and that stands for large polyp stony corals, because they have that large fleshy tentacles to them. So they can be medium to low in your aquarium, but when you first put them in your tank, make sure you start them on the bottom and slowly get them adjusted. Now, something like a zoanthid or a Kenya tree coral is a soft coral, and those corals do not have a calcium carbonate skeleton, and that is why they're a soft coral. They're nice and squishy, and you can put them in the tank pretty much anywhere. Again, start them on the bottom and work them up, because some zoanthids like lower light, some adjust and adapt to higher lighting, and they do just fine. Another thing to be mindful of is that some corals have sweeper tentacles that can sting nearby and neighboring corals. So you want to know the specific requirements of that coral before you're placing them next to your high-end coral or your more valuable coral, and it ends up stinging it and ultimately killing it. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. It's also very important to know the growth patterns of the corals that you're selecting, because over time as they grow, they could shade out corals that are underneath them, causing the corals that are under them to recede and even die. So it's important to know their growth patterns so you can set them up in different areas of the tank that's not going to affect other corals. So researching the specific coral that you plan on buying, knowing its lighting requirements, its water flow requirements, and how it's gonna grow in your reef tank, along with knowing if it's gonna sting neighboring corals, and then starting the corals on your sand bed or at the bottom of your reef tank. I believe that considering all these factors when looking to put corals in your reef tank is ultimately gonna help you find the perfect coral placement in your reef aquarium. And if you're looking to add soft corals to your reef aquarium, I made this video right here, my top 5 soft corals. Go ahead, click or tap your screen, check out that video, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.